Do we need to cut that one?
Yes.
Just got a message from Gene's wife. So he's okay. He's just he had conflicting things. So she's calling to let me know that he can't join us today.
We live, Zach?
We are. You're good to go.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then, the Waynesboro Advisory Committee. And welcome to everyone. Welcome to our board members. We don't have any representing the foundation today. Greg Hitchen is in the room with the city of Waynesboro. Maggie Van Huss is at large, and Joe is ex officio. So our first order of business is to get some update on our activities, both with regard to the detailed design and the lecture series. So I guess I'll turn it over to Joe for an update on the detailed design.
Sure. And before we get into that, related to the detailed design, I'll also mention that sometimes things move quickly, sometimes they don't. Right now, there are parts that are moving quickly. So we've already had Timmons on site. They're doing our where's the
Site survey?
no, where's the camera up there? Okay, just want to make sure I'm taking into account Mark and Carol. Timmons has been on site. They've been doing the mapping of the utilities and other infrastructure associated with the site. And Jonathan, some stuff's been happening with environmental impact. They're kind of starting to ramp up.
Greg and the city of Waynesboro have helped us out there, working through a grant to get that moved off our books and onto the grant document. So working through that expeditiously.
Yeah, so we're official, work's happening. So if we get into the detailed design, just a quick review. We had some of the community meetings and stakeholder meetings for the kickoff a few weeks ago. And so that kind of got everyone up to speed on what was happening. What's happened since is that, and I'm going to turn this over to Jonathan, but based upon community input, based upon analysis of the pre-planning studies and so forth, Blave Holmes and in particular Brad from Bernard Johnson have shared with us some diagrams and so forth. I just want to warn everyone though, don't take this seriously. This is just part of the process that will lead up to a proper presentation. We just want to make sure everyone's following along with the work that's being done. Right. So we can do a little bit of critique of it and so forth, but it is interesting. By the way, I don't know how widely I've shared this, but if you remember from the pre-plan, we had two perpendicular wings, so stacked on top of each other. What we learned, and this was a disadvantage of having a firm that hadn't done work for the state of Virginia before, but when you have a wing sticking out over space and it's occupied or occupiable, the space underneath of it on the ground counts as your square footage. So having these big perpendicular wings does not work. That was something that our previous architects didn't catch. And so we think we're going to have to move from that design. Otherwise, we're going to be having a lot of empty space counting towards our final design. So that's why you're going to see some changes to the way the building would be shaped. So Jonathan, I'll go ahead and turn over to you. If we could have Mary Zell share the screen, she's going to share a document. So Len,
Hey,
I thought you were out of town.
tomorrow.
No, I'm not. I misinterpreted then. So chair here and there, help yourself.
I'll take the
Could
close.
you pass an agenda over to Len?
What's that?
Can everyone see the document? Okay. No, very good. All right. So yeah, however you want to say it, top of the funnel, bottom of the pyramid, just kind of the idea, taking our pre-plan and morphing that into more usable space and trying to work through the systems of the building. So this is an interactive kind of diagram of what connects, like this store will connect to the lobby, will connect to the shared office space, or however they're trying to fill out the flow prior to kind of locking it in. Whereas I think you can see with the pre-plan where they kind of locked in the flow and said, hey, we'll put this here and put that there. This is just in general, what needs to connect, what do we think is important, have where. Names will change, sizes will change and be adjusted, but this is just, the mechanical room needs to be close to the loading dock, type information. It's not, spatial, so this isn't, they're not gonna lay this out on the ground and say load dock's over here, but this is just, kind of programmatically, what do we want to be close, what needs to connect, how does the flow work?
And I'll just add to this, just for perspective's sake, when you look at the purple areas, which are exhibit area 1 and 2, early childhood center planning, traveling exhibit, and then in the yellow, you've got the one purple area that you have as lobby exhibits and so forth. If you begin to add that together, that's approximately close to the size of between 3 and 4 halls of ancient life on Starling Avenue. So these are pretty sizable spaces that are dedicated to exhibits. I fully expect that the entrance lobby and so forth will have more public engagement associated with it. And then again, part of our thinking was that classroom, the dividable areas, and so forth, those will be multi-purpose, which will also include, maybe some two-dimensional exhibitry on the walls and so forth. I think there was a question, where's archaeology? That's something that they need to fix. So right now, when you look at exhibit area 2, they have theater and connections. That's duplicative from the pre-plan. So it should be theater connections, and then put zoology next, I think, with archaeology next to paleontology. So that's the best way I can answer that question.
That's the next support. Yeah, the names will change as we go forward. You just want to bounce to the stacking models. So this is kind of, they gave us renderings of what we had before. As Joe explained earlier, we had to change the cantilevered style building to try to more accurately meet our scope and scale provided to us by the state of Virginia. That is a good thing to know. Another note, kind of while we do this, while they're doing the blocking, the previous design had a lot of bathrooms everywhere. And individual bathrooms and here and there, and when there's nothing to code that said it had to be that way. And we discovered some wasted space there, and it's just big ideas. It's like, where do the bathrooms go? Where is the office? This design is as close to what we got from the pre-planning. So it's their idea of what they were thinking if they had done it right. So, exhibits, dead ends type of thing. And then if he moves things around, again, just very flexible at this point. There's nothing set in stone. Names, times change. Everything will change as we move through it. And then they took into account our request to not have windows throughout. So you can see that if we had a second floor there, there'd be exhibit space where we would probably want some windows or to see. They took that really into account when designing the third option. And yep, very good. So the classrooms on the top floor, I think they're working flow. The stairs to the right and left now, just some ideas of getting kids in and out, getting people through the museum, not necessarily what'll be there, just, if you have dirty shoes coming in from crawling through the river, you want to go put a set of stairs to the rear of the building to get to the classrooms. So it's really big picture type ideas before they nail down, where things are going to go. And I think that goes to show that they're ahead of the game from previously, where they just kind of had a pretty building and then the architect tried to force everything in to where they thought it should go, where this is practical, purposeful, and efficient.
What's at that very top? There?
Up top.
The very top thing.
That's the HVAC. So everything red is like the service elevator or the HVAC. So it'll be roof mounted again to save a space, usable space within the facility.
Does the design include anything on the roof for like visitors?
We're not there yet.
Right, this is. yeah.
So, yeah, keep that in mind too, as we go along, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
This is kind of the layout. We have made the correction on the side where we'd like to have it. I mean, that's the kind of question we're answering right now. It's, where will the bus be pulling through? Where will the handicap spaces go? What, where perforated or permeable pavers, where they're gonna be at? What kind of service entrance are you gonna need?
Sorry.
But just another view. Yeah, those are the option B, option C. Keep going there, Bill. Yeah, this is gives you another view. You guys are familiar with this from the pre-plan to kind of show you perspective, looking down on everything. And they did this again with option A, B, and C. And that the option C there is that the classrooms are at close to the view shed. So if we're gonna have windows, I think that's what they were trying to take into account there. The classrooms would be, natural light, whereas the exhibit space, we want to minimize that as much as possible. So it's, taking our ideas and trying to play with them in a real world scenario, to try to get a feel for it.
What are the yellow features represent?
The other features are office space.
That's a
and-
mixed bag.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
entrance lobby, museum store, public. It all ties back to that first diagram. So that's the public restroom space. There you go. So it's kind of yellow.
My only comment about that would be I would want more of the public space in the view shed rather than the offices and
Okay.
classrooms.
So that, there, you get to see. It kind of gives you that yellow down bottom. Or are you talking about up top?
Well,
usually?
Up top, yeah, I think that's the best views that you have. It seems that should be, featured.
Almost looks like empty space.
Oh, from the
That's where the
elevator
elevator
shaft.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
it
gotta be
looks like the
something
elevator
used
shaft
for
in the
that.
view shed.
Well, again, we're showing the work here, right? So
Yeah.
Not a final,
Right.
a final diet. So they're gonna present something to us and we'll have a chance to play it apart.
Yeah, I think that's what like here, they're saying that the bus will come through and here's where people may enter. So that's the public space. Keep going. Just another look. So they took, those boxes that you saw with everything and kind of put a skin on it, just to give you an idea of what may be the case. Here is kind of their idea is to have more structured side facing the downtown, historic downtown. As you move away from that, you get the blocked different levels. That is literally how they explain it. There's just blocks on different levels to try to show, you're moving toward the river, you're moving toward nature. There's a little less structure in that, whereas the other side would face the downtown and be a more structured, squared off look. There's another view of it. They are playing around with a deck patio area, a curved shape, just like a concrete deck, but still, that's not nothing set in stone. They're just trying to give us a canopy area outdoors where people, a 2-season or almost a 3-season space.
Yeah,
together.
this needs some work too, as far as, I do want it to look good, but at the same time too, they're showing us some pretty expensive solutions, and I want to be at this early point careful with that. At the same time too, what this doesn't give us in this particular layout, it doesn't give us a strategic outdoor protected event space, right? So what you have is that curved roof kind of towards the center. That's just not going to cut it because there's that flat roof to the right there, but it's also going to be shaded by that curved roof and whatnot. And part of the view shed is blocked by it. So there's disadvantages to this. And so we've got to start to weigh out the pros and cons of things like view shed, natural lighting, positioning of the classrooms, and so forth. But this gives you an idea of the process they're using to try to put the different sort of areas of the museum together, and then they flesh out to get an idea what it might look like. So we have to then articulate our priorities and move from there. Someone comment?
Yes, Mark commented covered entrance space for school bus off-road keep staging.
Yeah, I don't think that's being shown here. What we're showing is occupiable space as opposed to protected space. So I don't think at this point we have things like awnings or like a canopy type thing.
Okay. That's fine.
What do you say? Is that fine?
So that's fine.
Okay, yeah, that should definitely come without doubt.
So Joe, this rendering here, which I know is just a wild ass guess,
Mhm.
is 28,000 square feet of usable space.
Yes, well, pretty
Even
close
with
to
the
it, yeah.
fancy lines of the roofs and all that kind of stuff, we're still using 28,000.
Yeah, because
usable
right
space.
now, the roofs aren't, the roof lines aren't gonna be influencing the square footage.
Yeah.
What will be cutting down some of the square footage would be so like inside walls and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, but as far as what's under a roof, yeah, there should be 28,000 square feet.
Yeah, height wise, 20-foot ceilings or 10-foot ceilings, we still gotta decide that.
Yeah.
And that'll be budget, conscious there, ask them to do any kind of extra space or if the high ceilings, there is a calculation that can be done.
So the slanted roofs and stuff, just intuitively just says that's almost like lost space, right? There's nothing you can do with that other than
Put solar on it.
look
stuff
at
like
it,
that.
right?
It's air, we have to heat and cool too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's.
But
But for a natural history museum, we're all about outside nature, that sort of thing. Seems like there's some real usable opportunities there.
Yeah, because we had that problem at Starling Avenue. It was made to look pretty, but that's not really mission specific. And so, yeah, we'll need to bring that in for sure.
Because I think you could do some really cool stuff.
Like what?
Be creative about how to form it like a natural structure. sort of thing,
Oh,
right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I wish I had brought it. I didn't. John Ross introduced me to an architect friend of his, and we talked about buildings that represent something in nature, and we looked at ones that we all liked and didn't like. One looked like it was supposed to be a glacier coming down from the
Yeah.
north over, but to me, it looked like the building was melting.
Right.
In another case, I'm pretty sure he shared it with the number of us, but one that his friend designed where it looked like the building was shaped like that desert rose formation, the gypsum crystals that you can find out in the desert.
But
So yeah.
say an observation platform that's
Mhm.
structured like an outcropping up on the mountain.
Yeah.
Where folks could sit there at after they go through the museum, gazing out on nature, right? The
Yeah.
river, the mountain, and stuff like that.
We'll have to articulate those desires to them during the process. And again, this right now, we're in schematics, so.
Yeah, so remind me about the timeline here. How long are they gonna spend on this part of it?
We want to submit something to the General Assembly at the end of the year. But again, this is schematics. It's not about the details. The most important part here is to get the updated cost estimate so we can make the request to go to the capital pool. Right, so just something to take into
So what
consideration.
does that actually mean in practice? That's general scope of the building, size, format, that sort of stuff.
Coupled with the state has calculations that, because we're approved for what per square foot? It's like 1,000.
Wow, yeah, that's what we're requesting.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Hey, everybody, real quick, when Glave and Holmes was designing for the JMU farm, we were having discussions with them about adding on an additional space to the building so that it could become more of a conference center than what you all experienced. But they also had some very good ideas about the use of canopies, tents as portable spaces, but that would be somewhat, anchored so that they could be used very easily, but would be very sturdy. And it was going to cost some money. So I bring that up because it seems to me that as you talk about extending the space and bringing in more of the natural setting, that kind of tenting approach would make a lot of sense. But it's not as inexpensive as some might think. So I'm wondering if perhaps that might be something to talk with these folks about.
So you're talking about a situation where you have like tie downs and so forth, because for instance, the city does have, and I'm not saying that it's duplicative of what we're talking about, but they have a maybe 2 or 3 season kind of tent-like amphitheater down by the river and so forth. Is that something that you're talking about?
A little more substantive than tie downs. There's a whole variety of things out there now that can be moved.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking that it might be smart to have a discussion with the folks about that.
Okay. We can sort of put that on the agenda for the 12th.
You know, what's attractive about that deck thing, which is on the second floor, right?
Yeah, there's another view and you'll see that there's
Yeah.
space underneath of it.
What's attractive about that is not only is it visibly, you know, aesthetically attractive and it's really functional, but it gives you that covered space underneath.
Yeah, and I don't think that counts towards.
Because it's not finished above, right?
Right,
It's not.
that's my understanding.
But that could be the covered entrance for,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's got a lot of great opportunity there. And it looks good.
Yeah, it does look good. I mean, you know, I think we can start to pick and choose some of the practicalities behind it all, but at the same time too, it does look good. I also just want to be careful, you know, the way that this is set up now. I just want to question them on costs. I don't know. I don't have the expertise to say how much of this budget is this. I don't want this to be the next LED tower going up, you know, next to the building. So
I like the feature in that it reflects some of the meandering behavior of a river, let's say, and also like we talked about, if you were going to look at it from Google Earth, you would recognize that
Yeah. It would be
building,
expanded.
right?
Yeah.
It would stand out.
And I think, you know, the other, I don't know, I know this is, you know, it probably doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it. You know, as we go through this, you know, we need to look at what the state's gonna fund, but then these other, like, these would be really excellent things to do, could be set aside as potential naming opportunities or, you know, private fundraising. It may not happen right away, but at least it's on the plan to do that. So these things that the state won't necessarily sign up for, we want to hold aside for potential fundraising.
definitely, and not only that, but it also goes into the conversation of a phase 2 project. So we get this place going for 5 years, meet the success, start to talk about what are some of these added features that we would like to see here, and then totally reinvent the project.
Again, thinking out loud for a second, can you make that deck out of solar panels and walk on it?
Nowadays you can, I mean, to my understanding,
Wouldn't that be cool?
if you can line roads with solar
Yeah, right,
technology.
yeah.
Mhm.
The general question, do we have to have one building or can we have an outbuilding?
I don't know the answer to that.
The reason why I ask is because the restroom situation, like if you were to offer a separate building as a restroom, I think that would benefit the connections to the park and city and so forth. I don't know whether that's an option.
I know we've talked about having the restroom door adjacent to the outside, so even when the building's closed,
Yeah.
there would be a public access to that restroom. And that's part of the combining them all into one. But as far as another building, I can answer that, so I can find out the answer for you.
That would be good to know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's never come up. That's a great question, but I like the idea. I mean, there are probably very simple ways in which you can still be connected to the building, sheltered, but still be a separate building.
And a good model for that is the public transit center at Charlottes, which is right on the amphitheater. And it's upstairs. It's actually part of the building, but it has that out, and it's really nice.
Public transit center in Seaville.
It might be a question of cost as far as running electric plumbing and all, but.
We have it on each
Depends on how far away I guess you're talking about.
Right, yeah.
Well, we won't know if they don't ask the question.
Right, yeah.
Right now, it's throw it on the wall and see if it sticks time, right?
Oh, yeah,
We'll find out pretty quick.
definitely not. And we get to revisit all of this starting January.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So one thing that Roberto had brought up in the last session we had up in Waynesboro was the idea of thinking towards the future and expansion. And we talked a little bit about expansion there, Joe, when you were talking about the potential to look at this outside space as a future thing. Can we think about, or not think about, can we answer the question as to whether we could expand going backwards on this building, or are we limited? I know we can't go forward because of how we had to situate it with the floodplain, but I presume there could be expansion going backwards if we needed, let's say, office storage, other things that we wanted to add on, classrooms or whatever else we wanted to do. Are we limited in terms of a setback coming from behind the building?
When you say behind the building, you mean in this view going to our right?
I mean, in this view, behind it.
Going that way, okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's Arch Avenue.
Right, I'm just
so we
saying,
have-
even a small space, Joe, I mean, back on, as I'm looking at it, the back
There you go.
right, or in this diagram, the top left, so to speak, between Arch Avenue and the building, is that space that we could potentially expand to going forward, or are we limited, how far back we can go at another point in time?
I don't know of any limitations, you, Jonathan.
I don't know how far we can go forward because of the floodplain, but I do know that there's some public utilities on that far back
I'm
side.
sure the city's got a setback requirement.
Yep.
So it depends on how many feet between the front edge and that. So I don't know how much feet there is there. It's really not that much space, honestly.
I can
Yeah,
ask,
it doesn't look like a lot. I'm just saying, I mean, otherwise we're going up or adding on on that
So
top.
the other option is a flyway over by the firehouse. And repurpose that, or this building. Put a flyway. over.
Okay,
we
just
just
thought,
build Greg a new office. So,
Yeah.
hey,
Put
Mark,
it in the museum.
Mark, I like the idea, and I think it is something we need to consistently be thinking about. I will also say that with any luck, the floodplain analysis that we're paying for is going to expand what we can actually build on. You know, I mean, the city has invested in the improvements to the bridges and the dam, and is that other dam going to come out too?
Which other thing?
There's that dam on the Greenway.
No.
So, yeah, that's not coming. There's,
Okay.
that's actually not a dam. There's a big
Water main. on here.
28-inch water main.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is?
It
Okay,
actually comes from Baker Spring.
all right.
What about the road and parking lot that they put in here? Is that sized appropriately? And-
No.
Huh?
No.
Okay,
No, we're not at the landscaping.
so
yet
that's
either,
just
so-
a.
It's showing that there is a road and a parking lot.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're literally, that, like, there will be a place for cars.
Yeah, and I'm not even, I mean, we have to also check with the state, you know, so we're not commenting on, because I don't have the knowledge. Whether the way this is set up would just meet Virginia standards. Yeah.
At this point, we'd say, no, we don't want that. We want green space. I mean, that's what they're kind of asking us. But we can't do that because we do have to have parking lots. But
Yeah,
for instance, that would be a question we can answer now.
placeholder for the moment.
Right.
And so does the state have any issues with permeable space, permeable parking? You know, I mean, do they,
I know of places that's used,
yeah.
you know, still requires, maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing you just need to think about from day-to-day operation. I would prefer it as an operator to not have one blade of Kentucky bluegrass or whatever we plant down here, you know, on these 2.5 acres. You know.
But on the other hand, you want to demonstrate technology.
I think that gets into our leads certifications. So
Is that-
Yeah.
they'll
that's all-
look at stuff like that, like stormwater management and things like that, points.
They'll actually add that into the whole.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, reducing the asphalt will help us.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah,
there will be trade-offs between doing that and putting in solar panels or putting in ambient lighting or whatever. So those are the things that we get help with from this team, I think.
Okay.
All right, well, so again, our timeline is that this is gonna be, continue to work on until the end of the year, and then we're gonna have from that a cost estimate that we can provide for the state. Is that it?
That's correct.
And then we'll have a chance to revisit this in the
Yes,
spring.
this is just schematics. So then we go into preliminaries throughout 2023.
Okay. So I guess that brings us to what happens with the community. I know a lot of this is happening kind of between the museum and the team. Where does the community get an opportunity to provide some input? I see that community meetings are on here.
Yeah, so that's going to be basically team dependent. So we already have teams that have community representation on there. I'm open to ideas though. So for instance, right now, you know, when we get a little bit more information, I don't want too many people to get a chance to get into the weeds on this, right? You know, because I mean, it's taken a group of, you know, 8 or 10 people, you know, a half hour to go through these documents. If you start to get too many people, it's not going to be productive. So we definitely want to go to the team. We want to make sure that they have a chance to weigh in on it. But if there are ways in which we can, you know, present this, one way, of course, is to engage the community through the Wayne lecture series and keep them up to date with continued diagrams and so forth. We're going to Fall Foliage Fest, but there might be other things such as attending period when, I mean, it's a little late now because we have to talk about the spring, but if we start to get the community involved where they can just walk up, say at farmer's market time. We used to do that. We used to come here with our general ideas and our artifacts and stuff and just talk to anybody who would talk to us. But now that we have a little more momentum going, we can do that as well.
What if at each science talk for the speaker, you take 15 minutes and just communicate one piece? Just to kind of feel it out, slow drip it, so to speak, but focus only on one aspect. So you're not getting into the big discussion, you're not getting into the what ifs and all that stuff, but you're educating the community on one piece of it.
How do you divide the pieces is the question I would have. Is
That
it
would be
like
the-
by
Yeah.
Science topic or by classroom versus?
I would say by exhibit, for instance, this particular exhibit would focus on anthropology and just kind of this is kind of what it looks like. And let people make comments or whatever, but limit it to 15 minutes.
Are you sure the exhibits are the way to go? Because we're the experts and we're supposed to be laying out the information for the public as opposed to the public, saying, maybe these should be your exhibit topics. Right. And
So you've already gone through a series of those community meetings where people have already cataloged what they see are the requirements, right?
Mhm.
So at that point, that phase of it's already over. And it's just a matter of incorporating that into what these guys are doing. So then maybe show the results of it.
Yeah, we could do that. Well, actually, what I was thinking, I think I could fold that into it, is what if I took the initiative to for the next 4 science talks, I assume we have 4 left. That I can bring. Okay, as long as we have at least 4.
Yeah.
Could break it down into the 4 pieces you're talking about, or I'm thinking about. We could break it down into, kind of like building design, connection with the outdoors, and maybe some other things. And also keep in mind that this has got to be a living, breathing document.
Yeah.
That as we go through this process, we might see a more logical way to break the last 2 bits down.
Yeah.
Right. And so we can talk about exhibits and content and, where we're going with that, but also at the same time to give the community an opportunity. It would, since the lecture's free, it would be a good way to open up the design process, attract people to it and say, it's not just a science talk, but this is your chance to talk about what your building will look like. Because, in the diagram that we had up there, I see some of the process that we just had described by Jonathan. That was done by Brad, who is also the architect for the Prairie Fire Museum. And I'm beginning to see some similarities, right? So this might be an opportunity for us to kind of challenge it. Is that what we need? It made sense in that circumstance where you have this stacked design and then they put all that glass in front of it. It looks cool, but we can't afford that, right? And the state won't let us build it anyway. So, but now, how do we make that say this is the Shenandoah Valley? This is the Blue Ridge of Shenandoah Valley, right?
I was just gonna say, during the lecture series, it might be also good to talk about not just what we're doing, but why, just reminding people why, like, so maybe there's time dedicated to tourism benefits. Maybe another topic is the education benefits, obviously the science, but maybe just reminding people why we're doing it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the titles that we used for our teams that we set up over a year ago, I guess, and that is like building design, exhibits, lab classroom, landscape. So those might be the pieces that you use instead of.
Because the objective is twofold that I see. One is to get the community buy into it. So to keep them informed, keep them up to speed. But secondly, just to make sure you didn't miss something really glaring.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in with an idea, it's like, hey, what happened to this?
May I ask
Yeah, I
a
think
quick
you still have the
question?
opportunity to, like a comments box, even if it's the topic of the day is the landscaping around the building. We're gonna accept all comments. So if you have some other thoughts, let's put them in a box. Okay.
I have a quick question. And Joe, maybe you can answer this. What are the requirements from the state in terms of community outreach and community discussion and how this is documented? Is there anything like that, or is this just something that you all are proposing as a best practice? The reason I ask is I'm just very much aware from working with other state agencies that there are more structured ways of collecting data and reporting on data. And I'm just wondering about, I appreciate what you all are talking about, which makes a lot of sense. but are there actual benchmarks that we are supposed to be hitting with the state in order to receive this funding? Is that expected?
It's never been communicated with me from either the people we've contracted with or anybody else that this is necessary. I feel it's important to be sort of a complement to our eventual fundraising, to ensure that people know what we're talking about, that we're not going to them cold. That again, you know, we have people who have buy-in and participate. So that's really what the motivation behind it is, you know. But if there's a format that the board would like us to try to pursue as a staff, I mean, I'd be all ears.
I'm just asking because I've been to several meetings recently where JMU's Center for Constructive Dialogue, which is a graduate program here, has led some really amazing discussions, just one-offs basically on things relating to statuary that the city of Harrisonburg is considering, you know, but they just have a process down and it's very well documented. And, you know, that's all I'm wondering about. If you all are meeting the requirements and so forth, and you're just sort of adding this on to assist with future work and fundraising, that's fine. I was just bringing it up.
Okay.
One other idea, and I won't go long on this, but is if we control that process by not putting it in a public forum, let's say where one person in a room can overtake the whole conversation and turn it positive or negative, right? If we could control the process by, let's say, doing a monthly or whatever frequency update in the Waynesboro Record Herald or something, and then give a email address or some sort of place. If you have comments or suggestions, please submit them too. And that way, you know, individuals and their ideas are kept a little bit more private and controlled, and we're collecting that data. Just an idea.
I think we should do something like that regardless, Mark. And I think it would be easy to do. We're already doing right now it's periodic. When we have something to present, we put in the email newsletter. And I do get some, nothing major and certainly nothing negative, but in terms of the opportunity to respond to that information going out, people have taken advantage in the past. So we have that, but it would be a simple matter of modifying that slightly and maybe, you know, working with the Virginia pilot. So we have here. News Virginia. Yeah. So
yeah, and Bob Stewart's a member of our CCR board.
I also think about the library. So we have an exhibit in the library, and whether there's an opportunity to hold a monthly meeting or have some display there that we can, you know, a few of us can stand around and say, we're going to be chatting about this project. And, you know, I don't know. I know the librarian is favorable to working with the museum, so maybe that's a place we could go.
They don't have any meeting space.
Uh-huh.
And so there's some real restrictions on gatherings.
Okay.
So displays with the selected representative, you know, on site
That would be
schedule, that might be the better way to go.
so like one evening a month or something we could do.
I think that's worth exploring. I'm just saying in terms of a space to gather in and have your stuff,
Mhm.
it is
well, the exhibit's already
about this
there.
corner. Right.
Right. So
But I'm talking about any kind of major gathering. It's not
Not
gonna
gonna happen.
well, should we just then do a pilot and see what happens? What kind of, you know, just see if the library will work with us in terms of us having a representative there around the exhibit
Mhm.
with a name tag on, so everyone knows who it is, and then you come up for casual conversation, offer up your suggestions or something. And if we get the bums rush, you know, then we know we've got to switch gears.
I don't think we'll get the bums rush.
I
We
don't
might
know
get
either.
a right or a left.
Mhm.
She's very much into outreach in this community.
Okay.
Very much into outreach.
Okay.
I think she'll work hard to
Okay.
figure out something.
Do you have collateral at the display in the library now?
They do, the library in general has our general collateral. but I'm not sure how closely it's tied to the display.
Two thoughts on the science talk, one's only half page, but some sort of taking a page out of a strategic planning exercise. We would put some notes up, but have a static board in the lobby where people could jot down thoughts and stick it maybe under a category or stick it in general. Now that was the half-baked one. The other one is make sure there's a QR code to the museum website in all the presentations, so that someone can just sign up for the newsletter. Because I think at this point, we need to be collecting names. So that we go out collecting, asking for money, we have a big database of names.
It needs to be bigger, but we're working on collecting names in various ways, but certainly that'd be a route we should pursue as well.
With that in mind for the portfolios, that should be a major push to collect names and email addresses. Because you're gonna get mostly non-residents gonna be there. It's an opportunity to spread a wide net.
I love your parking lot concept of the sticky notes.
So,
I really do, because I think people will take advantage of that. Because it's no skin off their back to do
Right.
it. You know, idea, park it.
not speaking in a public meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we can easily tackle all three of these. We can work with the librarian to pick a time where we'll have, one or two representatives as sort of a pilot, see what the response is to that. Just because if we get no one at the first one doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just sometimes it takes time. So we'll keep that in mind. The next lecture, we'll make sure to have a board.
That's on Tuesday.
We can do it.
Today.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually on Tuesday, it'd be nice if you could announce we're gonna be at the library.
I'm gonna be with Riggs Ward. That's the day Riggs Ward's coming.
Right.
We'll figure it out.
I won't
And,
be-
and what, I'm sorry, what were you gonna say? Announce what?
I was gonna say at the science talk, it would be nice to be able to say we're hosting, evenings at the library on every third Friday, and you're welcome to join us and, share ideas about the project, and we'll be able to have a conversation, give you a few updates on where we are or something to that effect.
Okay, we'll figure something out, but, obviously I can't be at two places at once, but that's what we have staff for, so we'll figure something out to make that work. We can work with the library director to, come up with that opportunity, and we'll have a mechanism for, is there something like automatic we can do with people? I don't know what that looks like.
Here's a thought. What about a blog?
But people have to subscribe to it, though. I think you want
I'm
to
talking about-
push rather than have them have to go.
I'm talking about
Like a Facebook group.
the audio thing. What are
A
they?
podcast?
So
A podcast, that's what I mean. Podcast.
Okay.
So a 2-minute podcast, Zach can organize it.
That would be Ben. We got.
Or Ben,
yeah.
right, and have him, and he can say, you could do a 2-minute thing on the overall concept, and then maybe a 2-minute thing with the architect, and maybe a 2-minute thing with curator that's gonna, and then put them out as little snippets, and then start making them available. And make that part of the library to consider, right? Listen to the podcast on this topic, this topic, this topic. It's consumable, it's repeatable, it's easy to distribute or disseminate. And that could prompt, without having to stand there with an exhibit, prompt the conversation and the input. Have a series of them.
I will say we do have on the flyer that we're handing out for Fall Foliage Festival, we have a QR code that takes folks to the landing page of our website that's VMNH Waynesboro.
Yeah,
So on that page, we can do whatever we want. The
I think-
QR code's gonna take
yeah.
it to the same place.
series of podcasts, like 2 minutes, you don't want more than that because it's just enough to listen.
So we can add a QR code to the library exhibit poster that again takes them to the landing page. That's where we want people to go, and then we can update that.
Yeah,
But it'll be the same landing page.
Right, and I think what Greg said is true too, have that QR code big in every science talk presentation, so people can pull out their phone and right on the site.
You have the video that we did a while ago, we could easily do that. To make 2 minutes.
I hate to cut that up, but that's a great thing. That's a good, I hate to not use it either. I mean, it was very effective. Maybe it was too effective.
Because I'm not measuring that.
It was ultra effective. But that could be one of the podcasts on it.
All right, we'll see what we can pull together, pretty quickly, here in advance. I don't think it'd be a big deal. We do the podcast stuff remotely, like.
Yeah.
Wait, let me let my staff answer, right? Come on now, right? I'm talking with Ben, the way he does things. Can he interview, say, Stephen Blashfield or something, even if Stephen can't come to the museum?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And whether it's high quality YouTube video, it's, and even if it's not a podcast, or if it's a podcast plus,
Yeah, he's got a lot of options.
Exactly.
All right.
That's, is that landing page.
Purdue Department offer that option. The remote report.
Pardon me?
Been offered that to.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right, perfect. I'm sorry, I didn't see where that was coming from.
We're bringing them up to the current, the 21st century here.
Yeah, you are.
And back to Fall Foliage Fest, we can also set a sign up sheet for people who are interested in getting on the email list. That's very easy, no problem doing that.
And again, the flyers have a QR code.
Okay,
So we
okay.
can add a sign up form on
Th-
the back of.
There is one on the,
On the page itself, so we already have that.
I will suspect that you'll probably get 90% of the people that stop and talk to you are gonna say, I didn't know anything about this.
Mhm.
And they're not gonna be from Waynesboro or Augusta County. It's gonna be people from outside here. So it's a wonderful opportunity to really get the word.
Okay.
Okay, I'm watching my time a little bit, and just want to get us back on the agenda. I actually have a 2:30 meeting, so I'm gonna have to duck out at after 2 maybe. So we covered the update on activities then? the
I think
detailed
so.
Design and lecture series, so we want to move to the Carter proposal?
Yeah, so this is planning ahead. And after this meeting, I'm going to share two things with everyone, but I didn't want to send it to you all so that it was sitting there lost in your inbox wondering what the heck this is. So I wanted to talk about it, and if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, so you can weigh in on it, you'll have it available. But I will send the actual proposal. It's not long, maybe 7-8 pages. And then I will also have a PDF that's kind of a synopsis of it. So Carter was or is a global fundraising firm that has an office in Harrisonburg. We hooked up with them in 2015 to do a capital campaign plan, which is a good plan. It does need updating in terms of the specifics, but the overall structure of it works. So I just wanted to talk about what entails here, or what services they plan to offer, why we want to consider this, what it would cost, and what the outcome would be. So first of all, Carter does fundraising with a wide variety of nonprofits, museums, universities, and so forth. So they're widely experienced, and they've met with a lot of success. And I've looked at some of their case studies in terms of the success they've had at other smaller institutions going for a few million to $10 million campaigns. So they certainly have. If you go to their website, they've got the chops, as far as I'm concerned. When we look at our timeline, we're going to request to move to the capital pool with this General Assembly session. In a perfect world, that would mean, assuming we make the assumption we get approval to move forward at this point, and we're not one of the ones that, well, you just have to sit and wait until we've got room for you, right? Assuming we get approval and we move, in an optimal world, that means we've got money to build July 1st, but we know the world doesn't work perfectly. We learned that with waiting so long to get started with detailed design. It's just the way it is. So I'm talking here from a model perspective, not from what I'm saying is definitely going to happen. So in other words, if we get approved for if we get approved for the capital pool, that means we have to start looking at matching the amount of money that the state gives us with what the VMNH Foundation had approved, which a couple of 3 years ago was $2 million. Taking a step back at that, we also might want to consider asking the foundation board to up that to take into account cost escalation. $2 million in 2019 might be worth something more like $2.5 to $2.7 million, in today's numbers, right? So, but that's a separate conversation. But for us to go and do that, to raise that money in the community, we're getting all of these names, we've got skilled staff and whatnot, but don't forget, staff are distant. We are a small staff overall. We still have to keep Starling Avenue going. Our boards overall are not experienced in fundraising. They can't fill the gap of not having a development office right here. So a solution would be to get a company like Carter and to have them provide the organizational infrastructure here to run a campaign. And so with that timeline, once we're sure that we have in black and white in Virginia legislation that the Virginia Museum of Natural History has been moved to the capital pool to the tune of whatever the final number is going to be, $25 million. We just don't know at this point, right? Then we have leverage to go to people who are interested in the project and willing to leave a legacy of a large major gift to the museum of 100 or 500,000, maybe $1 million, right? And so, but without that, I don't think we have the leverage to give them confidence to write a check or to make a proper pledge or anything along those lines. We do have some pledges, and those are great and everything like that, but I think we're in a, if we do move into the capital pool and we've got that legislation that shows so, we've got the leverage to ask for the large dollars. So where does Carter fit into this? And again, I'll send this all to you. What they'll do is in advance of the campaign, they are going to update the campaign plan with us. We're going to rely upon a lot of our local assets, including Center for Cold Waters Restoration and the people there to provide their personal information. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Their personal knowledge of the philanthropic landscape, right? And Carter's going to help with that, and they're professional. They'll meet weekly with me. They'll enlist volunteers in the community to help, and that would include, if we decide to go that route, a campaign chair or co-campaign chairs. At VMNH in in Martinsville during Ryan's tenure during the fundraising time, we had honorary co-chairs. What was the advantage of having that?
We had 2 honorary co-chairs, and then we had 2 real co-chairs that actually did more of the hands-on work. So we had 4 chairs. It was, I would say, too complex. But I think the idea of the honorary co-chairs was sort of larger name, recognizable folks that could, draw the interest.
Did the honoraries provide a decent donation?
One of them did. One of them did actually. Yes. The other one not so much. It was more publicity. Which is.
It was a NASCAR racer.
Oh, yeah, well, the names definitely matter.
Yeah.
There's no question. But when the name comes up and says, hey, I put 50 grand into this,
That's like.
and I know you got 50 grand.
That was
I mean, that's what Franklin Cent does when he goes and does his stuff.
the David Sweet, the honorary co-chair. Or no, it was
David and Debbie were 2.
yeah, it was
Suzanne Lacey.
Suzanne Lacey. Yeah, exactly. All right. So during all this time, what the consultant does is ensure timely execution of work. They're developing the schedule and communicating with me. I would quarterback Ryan. Did you do whatever? Tom, hey, did you talk to this person? Len, did you set up this meeting? Right. So they're going to push for that. In addition, they'll help us develop a case for campaign support that's updated. They'll create the gift table. They'll develop in association with the detailed design, the naming opportunities. We have a general one that we supplied to Greg to help with corporate stuff, but that will of course need to be updated. They'll even do more. They'll provide orientation and training to volunteers. They're going to give us the scenario. Hey, we're going to meet with 5 or 6 people. We're not going to ask them anything other than, can we follow up with you? And then after that, we have the one-on-ones. And this is what happened during the one-on-one. This is how we approach them. So they're going to provide all of that. They'll develop customized ask strategies. They'll develop the marketing strategy when it comes time for the public campaign. They'll help us with donor recognition and stewardship programming development, and they'll plan for an appropriate celebration. So they'll take us through approximately a 6-month process of getting the $2.5–3 million, whatever the final number we decide to go for is going to be. And so where does this fit in? I think it is important we strongly consider this because we're pretty good. We've been seeing our annual increase in operational monies that we bring in at Starling Avenue, Martinsville. That's all going well. We've got that down. That's our annual campaign, our grant writing and everything else. And but this is different. We're talking on very specific one-on-one asks for a very specific objective, right? And I think they can help with this. The other thing about Carter, the price is right. They are not bottom of the barrel costs, but they're not out of this world either. They're talking for a 6-month campaign with these various services they're going to offer at roughly $50,000. And we have that money in the bank right now in the VMNH Waynesboro account. We want to use some of those funds on other things along the lines, but we're going to do an annual campaign later this month. We'll be sending out our usual mailings in support of our work up here. So, and just so you know where the staff fits in with this, I would be the one working most closely with Carter and therefore most closely with the donors. Brian is going to be handling the grant submissions, the grant research and so forth, be asking for help from various staff and volunteers who have specific knowledge sets. Jonathan's our Virginia certified construction officer. He'll be working most closely with the construction manager, ensure we're not missing anything with detail design, right? So where we have to jump in with that, we'll do that. Mary Zell will be handling all the database management in terms of running our donor software and so forth. And the curators will be offering support. Say, for instance, when we want to have a small event and we want these people to meet with the people doing the work, right? So that's where the main personnel commitment comes in. But again, I'll send this out. You're not in a position that you have to make as a committee a recommendation to the board that we move in this direction today, because we don't want to move on this until we have the legislation in hand that we've gotten some significant contribution from the state. So I'll open it up to asking any questions about any holes that I left in this description of our proposal.
So our role here is to review that proposal and then not make a recommendation to the board until we have better confirmation on the funding. So that'll be next year sometime.
I think you should, actually, I think it would be great. I don't know if we can do this by November, but we could, if we really put our minds to it, that I'm given permission to dip into that pot of Waynesboro money that we've raised already, when appropriate, to get the support of a fundraising firm to help with an approximate 6-month capital campaign. And the reason I put it that way,
Whether or not it's Carter.
that's up to you guys. I'm comfortable working with Carter. I would like to work with Carter. I think we can do it. This is not a big campaign.
But for us as a committee, I think what we need to do is see what you've already got and
Right.
mull that over, and in our next meeting, have a discussion about that. And
Yes.
then whether or not we're going to recommend that to the full board in our November meeting,
Yes.
or we want more time.
Yeah, and it would be okay to wait till February because we're not going to know by then.
Right.
We know how it is. We have the end of the General Assembly, which goes into the first week of March.
March, yeah.
Short session.
It's a short session.
February.
All right, so end of February. So we have at least until, say, March 1st or so. But the money, the legislation never comes out the next day. It's a process. So we do have the luxury of time right now. I think we approach this soon enough that we don't have to rush it.
Yeah, but I think at the least we could give the full board an update at the next meeting, just to say, even if it's a 30-second throwaway, we're working on this. As it evolves, we're going to get back to the full board when it's time to make a decision. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to go through them. But I think getting them to start thinking about it now doesn't hurt. So, all the work that's being put into this, I think it's a great idea, by the way. I would advocate more information sooner, as long as it's contained.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think we need to keep the board informed. It's just whether or not we officially make a recommendation and ask for the vote from the board. I don't think we may or may not be ready to do that, but we've got another meeting before then anyway. So let's do that and then come back.
Yeah.
All right, I'm very satisfied with that direction. That doesn't tie our hands, and I think it's fair enough. We can't pull together a proper proposal to do what we want to get this kind of support here for a capital campaign in that amount of time. That there's something wrong. But I just want to make sure too that we're not missing anything, because technically the foundation is holding the money. I just want to make sure, though, they're not directing where that goes. That's money that is restricted for Waynesboro, right? I just want to make sure everyone understands that. But it's still a significant assignment of funds, and we as staff, me, director, doesn't want to make that decision without the support of the board, because that will deplete a lot of our initial resources that we have for doing the upcoming work that we have to do.
So let's make sure that's an agenda item for.
And that balance right now is about 80,000,
It's about 72.
72.
Yeah, we spent
and-
a little bit bus trips.
Right. And will that require a vote by the foundation board?
That's what I'm saying.
Uh,
They have to be appraised of that, of course, but it's a restricted account
Right.
for Waynesboro. So
Yeah.
they're not directing, and you have, the foundation has input on it. And if you or Gene, for instance, really objected, or if at a foundation board meeting, whether it's executive committee or full board or whatever, someone objected, we would be obligated to bring that to the board of trustees to hopefully come to some kind of conclusion that's satisfactory to everybody.
But who's the governing body ultimately?
It would be the foundation.
The
board as far as-
foundation-
Foundation board. So if they dug their, I'm not expecting
Yeah,
this to
yeah,
happen,
yeah.
but if they dug in their heels, even the trustees couldn't override.
And I think it would be a perfectly,
Yeah, I
like
think
Joe
so.
said, it's designated as that. We regularly do larger transactions in Michigan, like whether it's exhibit rentals or.
So to give you an example, say when we get a grant from National Science Foundation, that's held by the foundation. Technically, the foundation has all the legal right to say, no, you can't spend anymore. But that's going against the granting agency's objectives of giving the money. And unfortunately, that's what's happened. I know we're public, but whatever. And that's kind of what we see happening, I think, at New College Institute in Martinsville, that we have the foundation board with money, the New College Institute Board of Directors or trustees or whatever their title is, wanting money, but then there's this conflict, right? And it just seems like everybody's in the wrong, and it's not good for the organization. So I don't think we have a problem here. I think we'd be extremely transparent and be like, okay, we've built up this pot of cash specific for this project. Now we want to use it a strategic way. And the objective here is to take $50,000 and translate it into $2.5 million or
Right.
whatever the final amount is.
And I'll just weigh in and say the foundation, I think, is very good as far as best practices, due diligence. And I think we, as staff, provide the courtesy, even if we know we can spend money really without permission, it's always going for the board, explaining why it's important. They just allocated money for Dr. Ariana Kuhn's startup funds for research. Cal just got an allocation. So the funds are for that anyway, but yeah, I think communication is good. So I think it's
Never hurts.
No.
Good.
All right.
Um,
I'm very satisfied.
so I think we've already talked about the foliage festival.
Sure.
And upcoming presentations. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Joe?
I'll just note that in the next few weeks, I'll be talking to the Augusta Bird Club, the Waynesboro Arts Club, and the Rosecliff Garden Club, updating on where we're
We
going.
need to get you a second home up here.
Yeah, anytime you're ready. So, but these are all good. These are all people that have heard from us before and invited us back specifically because they're interested in seeing the progress.
Yeah, Joe, we can just put a camper out there
Yeah.
temporarily.
Yeah, in the
Put a
lot
sign
right
on
here,
it.
yeah.
Make it at least an 8-footer now.
You all, since we met last, there's another synergy that I think is really important to recognize, and that is Grand Caverns is looking into getting a designation as a National Geoheritage Site. And so the whole idea of geoheritage coming to the Shenandoah Valley is a pretty big deal. These are nationally recognized sites that have significance. And so I was thinking about the connections that might exist between that community, the caving community, and the museum, as you all were talking about people to do outreach with. Some of those folks are very well connected. So just keep that in mind, not just underground, above ground.
Another good argument for the camper. Just roll it up there for it.
Hey, Carol, I've been in communication with Austin Shank, who's the Parks and Tourism Director up there. So we've had some conversations about that from the standpoint that we know that that Grottos and Grand Caverns is an asset for people coming to visit our museum, right? And so they totally get it. So we've just kind of kept them up to date, and they're on our list. So that's only knowing that is absolute gravy, for this relationship.
Okay, you may notice a typo on our agenda about the next meeting. It is November 1st.
Yes.
So we will meet then and
Tom, can I just
yeah,
add
go ahead.
that November 1st is when I'm talking to the Rose Cliff Garden Club at 1 o'clock. I encourage this group to get together, and Ryan and Jonathan and Mary Zell can handle all the logistics, and maybe I can come in on the tail end or something.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. And again, we'll have on our agenda to look at that Carter proposal. So we'll look for something from you before then. to
Yes.
Mull over. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, I will declare us adjourned.
Mark, thank you. All right. Zach, thanks for setting all this up.
Absolutely.